Welcome back to Panda Audio Books. We have reached a monumental turning point in the saga of Legend of Swordsman. In our last episode, Jian Wushuang secured his ultimate victory, crushing his rivals and claiming the Sword Marquis token. The clan's inner conflicts are settled, but the world outside is vast, mysterious, and far more dangerous. Today, the genius steps out of the shadow. Chapters 16 through 19 cover the crucial aftermath of the tournament. Wushuang resolves the final issues within the mansion before officially cutting ties and setting out on his true journey. He enters the sprawling Tiannan Domain, quickly encountering ruthless bandits, powerful rogue cultivators, and the cruel reality of the wider world. The small world is finished. The grand journey begins now. Chapter 16 starts today. Chapter 16. So what? Outside the trial tower, all was silent. No sound was heard except for the subtle sound of Jian Wushuang's long sword sliding back into its sheath. Ignoring the great shock in the eyes all around him, Jian Wushuang slowly turned away to leave. But before going, he stopped to glance at Jian Lin and said coldly, "This time I only chopped into your shoulder. But if there is a next time, I will chop off your head." Hearing this, Jian Lin was shocked and humiliated, feeling ashamed and resentful. And the disciples of Marquis Mansion did not recover from their surprise until Jian Wushuang had completely disappeared from their sight. Then, everyone present could not stop talking about what had happened. Brother Jian Lin was defeated. How could this happen? One move. Only one move. There is quite a big disparity in strength. Not only in their spiritual powers, but the disparity between their martial arts techniques is even greater. And it was. Jian Wushuang surpassed Jian Lin in explosive spiritual power. And as for martial arts technique, it should be known that Jian Menge, whose attainments in swordsmanship were marvelous, was regarded as the first genius in the Sword Marquis Mansion. But her swordsmanship was taught to her by Jian Wushuang. Even Jian Menge herself knew that she was not qualified to compete with Jian Wushuang in martial arts technique. In the entire Sword Marquis Mansion, it seemed that there was no one better than Jian Wushuang in martial arts technique. Because of the great disparity in their martial arts techniques, Jian Wushuang had defeated Jian Lin with only one move and had hurt his shoulder. If Jian Wushuang had wanted to, he could have killed Jian Lin just now. The news that Jian Wushuang had passed the 7th level of the trial tower and defeated Jian Lin with one move swept over Sword Marquis Mansion like a hurricane. Suddenly, the Sword Marquis Mansion was in total shock. Naturally, the news also came to Jian Menge at once. "Menge, something happened in the Marquis's mansion today." It was Jian Lan, the father of Jian Menge, who told her the news. Jian Wushuang had consolidated spiritual power and become a warrior. Moreover, his cultivation had reached the 6th step of the spirit path. Today, he passed the 7th level of the trial tower and defeated Jian Lin with only one move. Oh! Even Jian Menge felt quite astonished upon hearing that. Before our friendship broke up, he often said that he would be a real warrior soon. At that time, I thought he was just comforting himself. But now it seems that he wasn't. After being a little astonished, she slightly smiled and obviously did not take it seriously. "Menge, I'm afraid that you should attach some importance to this," Jian Lan said seriously. Though many people in the Marquis's mansion thought that Jian Wushuang had been concealing his strength, you and I know that there was indeed no spiritual power in his body just 1 month ago. During the last 4 years, Jian Menge was together with Jian Wushuang all the time. No one knew him better than they did. In only 1 month, he went from an ordinary man without any spiritual power to a warrior of the 6th step of the spirit path and defeated Jian Lin so easily. "What terrifying progress he has made," Jian Lan said. "So he has." Jian Menge nodded in agreement. "But, so what?" Jian Lan was stunned for a second. "Father, you're worrying that he will be a powerful opponent in the battle next month, aren't you?" Jian Menge asked. Jian Lan nodded. Jian Wushuang had taken a blood oath that he would compete against Jian Menge in the battle. That news spread throughout Sword Marquis Mansion. At first, none of them took it seriously. But now, they changed their minds. If Jian Wushuang defeated Jian Menge in front of all the people of Sword Marquis Mansion and the other strong experts present, she would fail to be the Sword Pavilion Master. Furthermore, She and her father would be laughed at by everyone. Jian Menge, universally acknowledged as the top genius in Sword Marquis Mansion, was completely surpassed by someone within 2 months. Was that not a big joke? Father, you worry too much. Jian Menge did not care about it at all and said, it's normal that Jian Wushuang could eventually consolidate spiritual power and make normal progress after practicing for 4 years. Although he could go from an ordinary man to reaching the 6th step of the spirit path within 1 month, he won't be able to reach the 7th step of the spirit path by next month. What do you think, father? Reach the 7th step in 1 month? Jian Lan was stupefied for a moment and then shook his head firmly and resolutely. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. There is a great disparity between the 6th and 7th steps of the spirit path. Even a genius in cultivation like you spent a full half-year advancing from the 6th step to the 7th step of the spirit path. Moreover, you couldn't have succeeded without the assistance of lots of elixirs and some natural treasures, let alone an ordinary person. Therefore, no matter how fast Jian Wushuang cultivates, he can't reach the 7th step of the spirit path in 1 month. Jian Lan said resolutely and decisively. And indeed, that was true. A great disparity did exist between the 6th step of the spirit path and the 7th step of the spirit path. To make a breakthrough within 1 month was definitely wishful thinking. Yes, it's almost impossible. Besides, even if he did succeed, what could he do? Jian Menge said disdainfully. Hearing what Jian Menge had said, Jian Lan relaxed the frown on his face and then smiled. Indeed, regardless of whether or not Jian Wushuang could reach the 7th step of the spirit path in a month, he could do nothing even if he did make it. Presently, Jian Menge possessed cultivation at the profound spiritual sea realm. No matter how extraordinary Jian Wushuang was in swordsmanship, he could not compete with Jian Menge unless he was in the spiritual sea realm. Maybe I am overthinking this. Jian Wushuang can't threaten you. Jian Lan smiled in relief. Don't talk about him. Tell me about the master behind you. Is there any reply to the message? I have gotten a reply, Jian Menge answered with expectation. Great Master said that she would present herself at the battle in 1 month to witness me becoming the new Sword Pavilion Master. Ha ha, that's great. If she could present herself at the battle, you would no doubt be the winner. Hearing the good news, Jian Lan felt very delighted. In the Sword Pavilion, the 4 great elders, headed by Elder Hong, were gathered. Ha ha. Young Pavilion Master passed the 7th level and defeated Jian Lin with 1 move. That's awesome. It's amazing that the young Pavilion Master could have made such rapid progress in such a short period of time, isn't it? If the young Pavilion Master keeps improving at such a speed, he is likely to defeat Jian Menge in the battle next month. Having heard the good news, these elders were all talking and laughing. Elder brother, we concealed that matter from the young Pavilion Master because he was previously not even a warrior. But now, should we tell him about it? Another elder suddenly asked. No hurry, Elder Hong shook his head and said. It's too early. We should tell him a bit later. By the way, I'm going to write a letter and send it to the Master in the Golden Dragon Palace. He will be glad to know that the young Pavilion Master has made such rapid progress. The whole Sword Marquis Mansion was shocked by the battle between Jian Wushuang and Jian Lin. However, Jian Wushuang, the hero of the battle, did not care about it at all. After getting permission to join in the battle, he directly left for Ninewolves Mountain. Jian Wushuang was very eager to get to the pond full of primordial spiritual liquid. Chapter 17. The Ghastful Speed of Improvement. Ninewolves Mountain was 15 kilometers away from the county, and it took Jian Wushuang half a day to get there. He spent a long time trying to find the cave in the north rift of the mountain. It's that cave. Standing at the top of a big tree, Jian Wushuang could see a cave at the bottom of the rift. Not far from the cave was a huge monster. Its breathing sounded rhythmically from its nose. Is that a bloody lion? Jian Wushuang stared at the huge monster, unable to look away. Bai Chong had mentioned that the cave with primordial spiritual liquid was the territory of a bloody lion at the peak of the 6th realm. A monster at the peak of that realm could match a warrior at the peak of the 6th step of spirit path. Some spirit beasts had innate advantages, so when they battled human beings, they were stronger. The spirit beasts are born to hate human beings, and their territorial awareness is extremely strong. If I want to get into that cave, I have no choice but to kill the bloody lion. So let's fight. Jian Wushuang's eyes were like lightning. Like an eagle preying on its food, he leapt down from the treetop. Long sword on his back was unsheathed at the same time. The sound of his sword echoed in the rift, as Jian Wushuang rushed violently towards the bloody lion. Bloody lion! Jian Wushuang's eyes were full of battle intent. Human being! Bloody lion woke up with a start, and a pair of dark gold eyes burst out with cold killing intent. With an angry roar, it charged ferociously at Jian Wushuang. The battle surprisingly finished in just an instant. Jian Wushuang sheathed his bloody long sword and looked at bloody lion on the ground. Blood oozed from the deep sword scar in its neck. Many sword scars of different sizes were spread all over its body. It was dead now. According to convention, at the peak of the sixth realm, the bloody lion was powerful enough to defeat human beings at peak of the sixth step of the spirit path. However, this was only the case with normal human warriors. Once it encountered human warriors who mastered excellent martial arts techniques, not only could it not defeat them, it would be totally defeated by them. Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship could overwhelm the whole Sword Marquis Mansion, so killing a bloody lion was rather easy. Ignoring the bloody lion's corpse, Jian Wushuang stepped into the cave. It was deep, and its path was very narrow. However, when he went through the small entranceway, he found it was quite different from the outside. The interior of the cave was quite refined. There was a stone table, bench, and bed. It appeared that someone had once lived here. As he entered further into the cave, he found that the pond emitted a faint scent. The diameter of the pond was 3 meters or less. It belonged to a small creature. However, as soon as Jian Wushuang noticed the pond, his eyes were full of wild excitement. Primordial spiritual liquid. Jian Wushuang looked at the fragrant, and nearly transparent, water in the pond eagerly. He could feel the pure power contained in the water. There was no doubt this pond water truly was the invaluable primordial spiritual liquid. The whole pond. Jian Wushuang jumped into the pond. The moment he entered the pond, he found that although it was not long in diameter, it was very deep, at least 10 meters. Such a large pond. All this water is primordial spiritual liquid. I wonder how much there is. Jian Wushuang thought in excitement. Primordial spiritual liquid was the purest spiritual liquid. It contained almost no impurities. For warriors following the spirit path, it was much stronger than spirit cultivating pills. Primordial spiritual liquid formed naturally, so very few people could use large quantities of it to improve their cultivation. But now there was a whole pond. If the water was divided into drops, how many would it be? What would the value be? No doubt it was very high. Sir Bai Chong has given me such an amazing opportunity. Trembling slightly with anticipation, Jian Wushuang was extremely grateful. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang began to cultivate in the pond. By cultivating in the pond, he could absorb the primordial spiritual liquid surrounding him and turn it into spiritual power. For an ordinary warrior, it would take a considerable amount of time to absorb all the primordial spiritual liquid in the pond, but Jian Wushuang was different. Heavenly creation skill greatly defied the natural order. The first-class spirit cultivating pill he'd taken earlier contained such toxicity that it would take ordinary warriors 1 or 2 months to absorb it. However, Jian Wushuang had completely absorbed the pill in just 1 night. It was the same with the primordial spiritual liquid. As Jian Wushuang started to practice heavenly creation skill, the power of his cultivation method immediately manifested itself. An overbearing power was erupting out from his body, forcefully absorbing everything nearby. The primordial spiritual liquid in the pond was the first to be absorbed. It flooded into Jian Wushuang's pores at an amazing speed. It was like a huge black hole, consuming everything, crazy and overwhelming. How horrifying was the absorption speed! As primordial spiritual liquid flooded into his body, it was changed into spiritual power by using the heavenly creation skill. With this process of absorption and change, the steadily increasing speed of his spiritual power could be regarded as terrifying. It is too fast. The increase of my spiritual power is too fast and terrifying. Jian Wushuang was shocked at himself. His mind was muddled, and he could not believe it. Because the speed was too frightening. In fact, all this was natural. Primordial spiritual liquid combined with heavenly creation skill, which defied the heavens, was truly overwhelming and terrifying. Just like the first-class spirit cultivating pill he'd taken before, for warriors, primordial spiritual liquid's function was much stronger than spirit cultivating pills. The pond's primordial spiritual liquid was equal to 10 first-class spirit cultivating pills. Therefore, the increasing speed of his spiritual power was naturally beyond imagination. In just half a day, Jian Wushuang found his spiritual power had reached peak of the 6th heaven of divine path. It had only taken half a day. It seemed that the pond had not reduced much in primordial spiritual liquid from this half-day of absorption. Over the next few days, Jian Wushuang focused fully on cultivating and didn't tell anyone about the terrifying improvement of his strength. Time seemed to pass slowly, yet 20 days went by in the blink of an eye. In the pond, the water level was decreasing. Jian Wushuang remained in the pond, as some primordial spiritual liquid was still flowing into his body. Finally, as the last drop of primordial spiritual liquid was absorbed, the huge pond had disappeared completely. Jian Wushuang, who had been indulging in his cultivation, suddenly opened his eyes. A terrifying flash burst out from his eyes. Chapter 18. The Breakthrough. From the bottom of the pond, Jian Wushuang stood up slowly. All his muscles and joints crackled as he rose. He stretched and took a great leap to the entrance of the cave. Jian Wushuang looked at the wall of the mountain ahead of him with his sparkling eyes. A sudden clenching of his right hand made an explosive force burst out instantly from the mountain. Bang! The tremendous sound echoed through the cave. Jian Wushuang looked at the large hole in the wall in front of him. His eyes were bright. Not only did I reach the 8th heaven of divine path, I reached the peak. Clenching his fists in excitement, he could feel the surging power contained in his hands. Jian Wushuang had spent 20 days cultivating in this cave, absorbing every drop of primordial spiritual liquid from the pond. It had contained a huge quantity of pure spiritual power, which he had absorbed completely and transformed into spiritual power. As a result, his strength had improved to an amazing state. Not long ago he had been at the 6th heaven of divine path, close to the peak. But today, a series of breakthroughs had brought him to the 7th heaven of divine path, then the 8th heaven of divine path. He had skyrocketed to the peak of the 8th heaven of divine path. It was an explosive breakthrough. But everything happened in a systematic manner. After all, not everyone had access to such a vast amount of primordial spiritual liquid to help with his cultivation, let alone heavenly creation skill, heaven-defying cultivation method. His marvelous breakthrough was attributed to the primordial spiritual liquid and the heavenly creation skill. The 8th heaven of divine path was equivalent to the initial spiritual sea realm for an ordinary warrior. One who reached the peak of the 8th heaven of divine path had the same power as one at the peak of the initial spiritual sea realm. So spiritual power operated with the strength advantage of heavenly creation skill could be equivalent to the profound spiritual sea realm. Perhaps it was slightly lower, but not by much. A stunning light burst out from Jian Wushuang's eyes. Jian Menge, I am gaining on you. Jian Wushuang roared. Jian Menge had cultivated to the profound spiritual sea realm. Although he had not solidified his cultivation, he had his heaven-defying heavenly creation skill, spiritual power, and so on. It meant that compared with Jian Menge, he was almost as strong as her. He had only needed 2 months to catch up to her. 10 days. There are still 10 days before the battle. With his eyes squinting, Jian Wushuang thought, I should take my time. I have gained battle strength similar to the profound spiritual sea realm and have a great chance of defeating Jian Menge in battle. However, I still need to prepare a certain trump card for myself, just in case. Thinking about a trump card, the first thing that came to his mind was the secret skill recorded in heavenly creation skill. Soul-devouring secret skill. It was an extremely powerful secret skill that defied the heavens. Along with heavenly creation skill, he was deeply impressed with this secret skill. It was impossible to forget. When Jian Wushuang thought about this secret skill, he was shocked. It was so powerful that he thought it harmed natural harmony. Furthermore, it inflicted damage on the person who exercised it. Nobody was willing to use it unless it was really an emergency. It did not make sense to use such a secret skill as the trump card. Soul-devouring secret skill contains 3 scrolls. In my present realm, I can only try the first one, at most. I can't even consider the second and third one right now. With a smile, Jian Wushuang started studying this skill. It took him a total of 5 days. 5 days later, Jian Wushuang was in the north rift of Ninewolves Mountain, sitting cross-legged in a glade. Let's do it. He took a deep breath and started practicing soul-devouring secret skill. He spent 5 days studying. He was able to grasp the first scroll of the skill, but it had taken a considerable amount of time to carry out. He knew well the harm the skill could cause him, so he was very careful when putting it to use. He didn't dare to be sloppy. The secret skill, it devours one's soul. As he cultivated the secret skill, there was a buzzing sound. It even shocked the void. Jian Wushuang's body seemed like a giant black hole, into which there were constant peculiar forces flooding in at an amazing speed. These forces were so complex and diverse that Jian Wushuang had difficulty identifying them. But he found that with the infusion of these forces, his cultivation was booming. He had already been at the 8th heaven of divine path before, but this wild infusion of forces pushed his cultivation to a higher level. A single moment was enough to make a breakthrough from the 8th heaven. The 9th heaven of the divine path. His power continued to rise even after he reached the 9th heaven of the divine path. Suddenly, there was a sharp surge of pain in his heart. It became more intense with the rise of his cultivation. Stop it, now. Jian Wushuang was clenching his teeth. His face was distorted. Feeling the sharp pain, he stopped the operation promptly. As soon as the secret skill stopped, his increasing cultivation ceased. The pain began to weaken. Even so, the spasms in his body did not diminish right away. Lying on the glade, Jian Wushuang closed his eyes. He was gasping for breath and looked very weak. It was a long time before he opened his eyes. Soul-devouring secret skill, it really is a secret skill that devours the soul. Jian Wushuang couldn't help shaking his head. It really hurt. It was harmful to practice this skill. He had spared some effort, because he didn't push his cultivation to its full extent. However, he still felt extreme pain. If he had exercised it to the full degree, it would be more painful. The soul-devouring secret skill really causes a surge in my cultivation in a short time, but it hurts me even more, Jian Wushuang said to himself. It was one's essence, qi, and spirit, rather than their spiritual power, that the soul-devouring secret skill harmed. If it only consumed large quantities of spiritual power, he would not care at all. Heavenly creation skill, after all, helped him to recover spiritual power quickly. As for the essence, qi, and spirit, however, even heavenly creation skill could make no difference. Jian Wushuang shook his head and looked up. He wore a weird expression. It's. Jian Wushuang stared at everything around him in amazement. He realized the earth within dozens of meters around him had become lifeless. The earth, which had been dark green before, was now yellow and full of cracks. The flowers, grass, and trees were withering away. The ground with dozens of meters around him had died in the twinkling of an eye. Chapter 19. The Gathering of All Parties. With his eyes wide open, Jian Wushuang stared at his surroundings in wonder. A dozen-meter radius where the earth was a lifeless land of death. Further away from the circle, the land was green and vibrant. It was at this exact moment that Jian Wushuang understood how the soul-devouring secret skill had been named. It devoured the soul. What was soul-devouring? The skill would take the soul of the earth, creatures, and nature. He understood what the strange and intricate power flowing into his body just now had been. It had been the natural power of the nearby creatures. The soul-devouring secret skill worked by taking the power of all living beings within reach and keeping them for his own use. This skill really is horrible. Unless it is absolutely necessary, I will never use it again. Jian Wushuang warned himself. After this first taste, Jian Wushuang dared not to try it again. Instead, he continued to study the detailed steps of carrying out the skill. 3 days later, Jian Wushuang was in the creek in the very middle of Ninewolves Mountain. He cupped his hands to drink from the creek and then stood up. It is the end of the month, and I am only 2 days away from the battle. It is time to go back now. Jian Wushuang looked at the endless sky above him. He smiled and jumped up into the air, then headed in the direction of Sword Marquis Mansion. In the early morning, dawn was just breaking. In Sword Marquis Mansion, when the first blush of the rising sun from the far horizon began to light the earth, everyone fell into an uproar. The disciples and tribesmen of the mansion poured out from each building and gathered in the drill ground at the center of the Marquis's mansion. Each party and tribe of the whole Basui commandery, as well as those from Sword Marquis Mansion, had dispatched their experts to Sword Marquis Mansion. Today, the annual Sword Marquis token battle was being held in the mansion. Actually, the so-called Sword Marquis token was only a title for the strongest person among the youth. An expert would grow up and eventually advance, so the Sword Marquis Mansion attached great importance to the cultivation of young disciples. Every year, Sword Marquis Mansion invited all the parties and tribes of the commandery to watch the battle. Under normal circumstances, an invitation from Sword Marquis Mansion, the top most recognized power in Basui commandery, would not be refused by any party. This year was no exception. The Sword Marquis token battle was of special significance, especially this year. It was universally acknowledged in Basui commandery that there was a rare super genius in Sword Marquis Mansion. This super genius was only 16 and had already reached the profound spiritual sea realm. What's more, her swordsmanship was unfathomable. Such a young girl was going to take charge of the sword pavilion, which enjoyed a significant position in the mansion. Her deeds made every prominent persons in Basui commandery full of curiosity and expectation. And this exceptional genius was of course Jian Menge, the god's chosen daughter in the Sword Marquis Mansion. It was the perfect time for Jian Menge to flex her muscle in front of all the experts and to shoot for fame. After today, the sword pavilion would officially be in Jian Menge's charge. She would be the one crowned in the mansion. A great number of people had already swarmed into the wide drill ground. There were 2 platforms. One was used as the ring for disciples to show their strength, while the other one was the stands for the audience. Jian Xinhong, the current Sword Marquis Mansion master, was seated in a chair, having a casual conversation with several great personages who sat by him. Since these people could sit side by side with the mansion master, one could infer that their background was not normal. Look! That must be Sichu Qingyu, the master of tribe Sichu. That's Yi Xiu, the master of tribe Yi. Their family also focuses on swordsmanship. However, compared with our Sword Marquis Mansion, they are far worse. It is unexpected that this Sir Bai Chong, the mysterious supervisor of the gladiator arena, would come. A lot of disciples of the mansion were carefully discussing many things around the drill ground. They fixed their eyes on the stands from time to time to have a good look at these famous experts whom they seldom saw. The Sichu and Yi tribes enjoyed a little less power and position than Sword Marquis Mansion, but the gap was narrow. As for the gladiator arena, it boasted great strength. In addition, the arena held an aloof position and didn't participate in the conflicts. Even the mansion master, Jian Xinhong, was wary of Bai Chong. Mr. Bai Chong, it is really a surprise that you have come to the Sword Marquis token battle personally this year. In recent years, you often sent a gold-robed servant from the gladiator arena on your behalf, said Sichu Qingyu, while wearing a smile. It is a great honor for me and the mansion that Mr. Bai Chong has chosen to participate in this battle in person, said Jian Xinhong. This battle is much different from those before. It is normal that I should come in person. I am also curious about this exceptional genius and want to see exactly how talented she is, Bai Chong replied with a smile. Trust me, she won't let you down. Jian Xinhong said and laughed, showing his confidence in Jian Menge. Really? Bai Chong lifted his eyebrows. He laughed uncannily but didn't say anything more. Looking around the drill ground, he immediately noticed Jian Wushuang in a corner. He was leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. Bai Chong could not help smiling. The little boy is so calm. I wonder whether his strength has improved since the journey through Nine Wolves Mountain. Bai Chong was quite concerned for Jian Wushuang because of his friendship with Jian Nantian. He had provided Jian Wushuang with the opportunity to gain a whole pond of primordial spiritual liquid. His consideration for Jian Wushuang could be seen from what he had done. He had come mostly because of Jian Wushuang. It's almost time. Let's start, Jian Xinhong said on the platform. Jian Lan, who stood close to Jian Xinhong, nodded his head gently. Then he took a few steps and came to the very center of the platform. He cleared his throat and said, "Attention! Would all of the disciples participating in this battle please come up?" As the great elder of the Redley Martial Hall, Jian Lan was supposed to host the Sword Marquis token battle this time. There was a disturbance in the drill ground. The young disciples who had acquired their position in the battle by getting through the 5th level of the trial tower went to the center of the ground. They hustled and bustled. There were a good dozen young disciples at first sight, all of whom were geniuses in the Sword Marquis Mansion, including Jian Wushuang. At the same time, a beautiful white figure was walking slowly towards them. Suddenly, everyone on the drill ground gave their full attention to her. Not only the disciples on the ground, even the personages on the platform turned their gaze to this white figure. As the god's chosen daughter in Sword Marquis Mansion, disciples in the mansion adored Jian Menge as if she was a goddess. She was so beautiful, along with her cultivation and even her gift in sword principle. She had one great admiration. And with that exhilarating first clash against the outside world, we conclude Chapter 19. Wushuang has proven that his strength gained in the clan is more than enough to handle external threats, but he is now a recognized, powerful figure, making him a target. He has secured his first major goal and now sets his sights on the true challenges that will define his cultivation path. Where will his search for power and the truth about his past lead him? The mysteries of his bloodline and his father's fate still await. Join us next time for chapters 20, 21, 22, and 23 as Wushuang progresses toward his next major destination and faces his first significant trials against a powerful sect. Thank you for listening to Panda Audio Books. If you are ready for this new adventure, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to join Wushuang on the road to greatness.